Michael Knowles, there's no doubt the dynamic of this race has changed. Do you think it's going to change the result?
I don't think so. I don't think you're really seeing that in the polls. In the polls, Trump is still looking pretty good, especially in the swing states, and especially when you consider the distinction between the Electoral College and the popular vote. I think this is why you have some leading Democrats who are saying that they actually don't want to be the vice president. They don't want to be the running mate. They don't really want to challenge Kamala. And so there is some new energy. I totally agree with that. But Kamala has some major vulnerabilities here. As you pointed out, Piers, in the previous segment, Kamala was the most liberal member of the Senate when she was there. Your previous guest, Harry Sisson, said something that wasn't true. He said that she was not for Medicare for all. She was. You can see it on her Medium blog page from 2019, My Plan for Medicare for All. And she was far to the left on so many other issues. The other big vulnerability is that though the Democrats want to deny it now, in March of 2021, President Biden said that Kamala Harris was going to be in charge of the border policy. So, they're trying to change their news stories on it. But he said, I'm putting her in the lead of immigration. That has been the most monumental failure of the Biden administration, and it ranks toward the top of people's issues.
Someone did a big mashup, and it had all the liberal commentators and anchors at CNN, MSNBC, and so on, all denying yesterday that she'd ever been called the border czar, and then someone had clipped up evidence that their own networks had indeed called her the border czar. And I think that's a really significant debate to be had, because it's indisputable that she was depicted that way. And there's no doubt if you then accept that she was the border czar, that her management of the border as the czar has been a complete and utter disaster.
Of course. Piers, I actually have Biden's exact words. I just finished broadcasting my own show, and I even second-guessed myself. I said, maybe I misunderstood. I seem to recall every news organization reporting this, but maybe I was wrong. No, he said on March 24th, I have asked her, the VP today, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle, and the countries that are going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border. It's not her full responsibility and job, but she's leading the effort. And he even turns to her, he says, Madam Vice President, thank you. I gave you a tough job. So it is a tough job. She totally failed, and they got an answer for it.
Michael Knowles, there's no doubt, notwithstanding all this, that the race has changed in the sense of a lot more energy for the Democrats, a lot more youth in their candidate than they had before. And it's going to be, I would imagine, it's going to be a closer race than it could have been. Donald Trump, as we've heard from other guests today, one of his biggest opponents is himself and his mouth. How careful does he have to be, do you think, in terms of how he talks to Kamala Harris? Particularly if, for example, they do get it on a debate stage in September, because if we thought the last debate was electric and consequential in the way it went down, you can only imagine how big it's going to be with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris standing there for 90 minutes. So how careful does he have to be?
Trump needs to change the way that he speaks based on whether he's speaking to a man or a woman. Of course, this is true. Trump knows this. He ran against a woman in 2016, and he beat a woman in 2016. And Republicans, unlike our Democrat friends, do know the difference between men and women. So, of course, he's going to have to use different rhetoric. But I'm not all concerned about it. I think he's going to do just fine. When they tried to hammer him on rude language to women in 2016, of course, he said, I only use that language about Rosie O'Donnell, and he sort of laughed it off, and it seemed to work out just fine. Meanwhile, you're going to hear the rhetoric of Kamala Harris. She's going to, it seems, continue this campaign theme that Trump is an existential threat to democracy that Biden has been pushing. That, of course, established the premise that would justify the assassination attempt. So I think that's perilous rhetorical ground for the Democrats. And then you're going to hear a lot of vague rhetoric. The famous line from Kamala, the only one we hear repeated over and over, is that she wants to imagine what can be unburdened by what has been. You saw in Kamala's first campaign commercial, it's all just about freedom in the abstract. Yes, she runs on abortion. Yes, she runs on guns, issues that she can always harp on in the future. But she doesn't run on anything else that is specific, because her record on the economy, on her administration's record on national security, on the border, on foreign affairs, it's so dismal. She doesn't seem to have a vision that resonates with people. That's why when she ran for president, she had to get out of the race before the first primary.
We've done a bit of research while we've been on air, because you were very clear that people on the left had not said Kamala was the border czar and are now trying to wriggle off the hook. So we've got a little mashup which Newsbusters had prepared for the delectation of the world. Let's take a look.
Border czar. Vice President Harris was not a border czar.
Meantime, Vice President and border czar Kamala Harris facing some backlash.
What he said about Harris and immigration was not true. She was never appointed border czar.
And this will be her first visit to the U.S.-Mexico border region since she was appointed as the border czar by President Biden.
People are going to have to counter the misinformation. You already hear folks talking about the border czar. She wasn't the border czar.
President Biden tapped Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, to be the border czar.
Now, she wasn't the border czar. That's what Republicans labeled her.
They were very critical of Kamala Harris, especially in her role as border czar.
Now what she's up against is folks lying about her border record, calling her a border czar.
Kamala Harris, who was appointed as the border czar.
The Biden team didn't declare her the border czar. They wanted her to work on kind of the root causes of immigration.
There has been so much criticism against Kamala Harris. You know, she was the border czar.
Calling her sort of the border czar, which wasn't necessarily the case.
So the border, if they weren't planning to address it in a major way, do not make her your border czar. She met with some of the Northern Triangle countries, but nothing has effectively changed.
Now, Wajahat, would you like to review your emphatic denial that ever happened?
Last time I checked, I don't think I talked about the border czar. I don't think you showed a single clip of President Biden calling her a border czar. I don't think you showed a single clip of Kamala Harris.
You did talk about the border czar.
You said it was only Axios. You said only Axios.
No, yesterday.
There we have every major network in America saying one thing, and they're trying to deny it. They all called her the border czar. And the reason they all want to try and deny it now is because they realize it's incredibly damaging to Kamala Harris if it is seen by the American people that she was indeed in charge of sorting out the border problem and presided over a complete disaster. So it's actually a critical thing here, and I'm bemused why the media is trying to pretend they didn't say what they said. All of them.
Well, two things real quick. When you were talking about that one publication yesterday that flip-flopped, I gave you the name, it's Axios that flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And the media, like you said, which is not trusted by either... Wait. The media that is not trusted by either the liberals or Republicans said a lot of stuff, and they're the ones calling her the border czar, but Joe Biden never did. Kamala Harris never did. She was not the border czar. She had a responsibility to talk to these countries, specifically Central American countries, to see if they can engage in policy to reduce the flow of migrants. But facts matter. Right now, the lowest crossing of migrants, even lower than Trump.
Hang on, Wajahat. Hang on. Facts do matter. So, Michael, can you, for the benefit of Wajahat, who clearly wasn't listening to you earlier, can you repeat what Joe Biden said about Kamala Harris in relation to her job?
I'll add in another line, too, which I excluded earlier. Wajahat, you just said that Biden never made her the border czar or put her in charge of the border. Quote, March 24th, 2021, I've asked her, the VP today, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that are going to need help in stemming the movement of many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border. It's not her full responsibility and job, but she's leading the effort. When she speaks for me. He imbues her with presidential authority, and then he turns to her, Madam Vice President, thank you. I gave you a tough job. Wajahat, what about that is confusing?
Okay.
I can understand English. I was an English major.
Throw your hands up and admit you were wrong.
No, I know that you guys are doing the RNC's work for them. I know you're trying to help Trump, who's struggling right now.
Facts matter, you said.
No,
facts matter.
You said you all are saying that she's the border czar, and I have ears, and I heard that, and she is not the border czar. She literally was given that responsibility. She's not the border czar. And if you want to play on immigration, I will gladly play on immigration. Please explain to me why Donald Trump called up Republicans and told them to tank what would have been the strictest bipartisan immigration bill, in which he said would help President Biden, and Republicans bent the knee. So instead of helping security,
I don't mind you playing whataboutery, but actually it has been Joe Biden's presidency.
I'm not. Let's just have facts.
Wajahat, I'm happy to give you an answer.
When it comes to facts, Wajahat, you're on slightly slippery ground today, I have to say. Michael Knowles, there was a strange survey came out from YouGov, a poll, saying that 42% of Democrats blame Donald Trump and the Republicans for the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, which just seemed to me to be a completely absurd finding.
Of course they do, because Joe Biden and all of the Democrat leadership have established that premise. Joe Biden's entire campaign was predicated on Donald Trump posing an existential threat to democracy and Donald Trump following in the footsteps of Adolf Hitler, which he said in many ways, many times. And so if those two things are true, they're not true, obviously, like so many things that Biden says, but if those things were true, then that would justify the assassination of Donald Trump, unless you think that we ought to play soft with Hitler or with existential threats to our country. So I'm not surprised that some 40% of Americans would blame the man who was almost murdered. I also don't stay up at night wondering the answer to the questions of this mythical shard or any other ways that the Democrats are trying to downplay the very near, within a hair's breadth assassination of Donald Trump only did not occur because at the last second he turned his head about 20 degrees. I know that it wasn't a shard from a teleprompter, for instance, because we have photographs from behind of the two teleprompters looking just fine after the bullet went through Trump's ear. As to why he wasn't immediately whisked off stage, I wonder why he wasn't held back in the holding room when they saw the shooter walking around a long while before the speech. But me, I'm a, just a regular Joe. When I go to a speaking event, they'll sometimes hold me back. I'm not the president of the United States. So that needs an answer. But then when he went down after having been shot, the reason they didn't pull him off is he went down, and he's a pretty big guy. We were hearing earlier that some of these agents couldn't even cover up to his chest. And then Trump himself said, hold on, let me get my shoe on. And he stood up there and he reassured the crowd, which demonstrated incredible political leadership, showed courage literally under fire. And then they got him off stage quickly after that. The answers that need to be given here are not how Donald Trump showed such immense courage and how this iconic photograph of political bravery was taken. The real questions are, why was Donald Trump not given sufficient security resources? Why did the Secret Service lie about the requests from the Trump campaign to get sufficient security resources? And how far up does this go? Sure, both parties now want to fire the Secret Service director, and she resigned finally under duress. But what about her boss, Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary? What about his boss, Joe Biden? How on earth is the most threatened man on planet Earth, Donald Trump, even needing to ask for additional security? And how on earth could it have been denied?